Shower.
I love that. Okay, let me share my screen. So today we're talking about mobility and flexibility. And if this is something that sparked your interest, I'm glad you're on this call. And if you're like, how is this anything relevant or worth knowing? I'm very glad you're on this call. This is just going to be important for life in general, especially as you're on your fitness journey, right? To make sure that we're able to perform exercises to the best of your ability. If you don't have ideal flexibility or mobility, you're not gonna get the most out of your workouts. That's a huge thing. If you're not getting that full range of motion or performing things properly, you're not gonna get the correct effects from them. But also even past this phase of your life, in your 20s and your 30s, when yeah, we want to look good, we want to feel good, we want to feel hot. But mobility and flexibility is going to be like the most important thing to you when you're 50, 60, 70 years old and you just want to be able to walk up and down the stairs and push the grocery cart by yourself and things like that. So, super important to make sure that we do not neglect this aspect. A lot of people do. Imagine those like big bodybuilder guys that you can probably imagine walking around in the gym and they are so stiff and they're, walking all crazy and sure maybe they got big muscles now, but like I don't even want to know how they're going to feel in a couple of years. So, here's the biggest difference. So, flexibility. I think a lot of people are familiar with what that word would mean. The definition that I found is the ability to move a muscle or the ability of a muscle to be passively moved through its entire range of motion. So, basically, stretching. And the key word here is passively. So maybe that's using like a band, like think about if like you're laying on your back and you're holding your leg like with a band, or even just like holding your leg with your arms, or using a wall to stretch. Something where it's just passive. You're just kind of like chilling in the movement and there's no strength along with it. Uh, Muscle length without strength. So flexibility is all about muscles lengthening. And as we strength train, those are our muscles contracting. So we definitely do want to make sure that we are, keeping the scales balanced by doing both things. Foam rolling also improves flexibility. So not only stretching, but highly, highly, highly suggest foam rolling, especially as you get more in tune with your body and we really start to just understand how your body is moving and feeling and getting connected with each muscle and soreness and mobility and all of that. You want to know what muscles on you feel tighter, shorter, and need those extra minutes of stretching and foam rolling, making sure that you're incorporating both techniques into your practice is very important. You can have amazing flexibility, but terrible mobility, and you can have the other way around. So we'll kind of get into that. So mobility is flexibility with a strength component. So we'll talk about that, but just kind of put that out there that they are not only are they different, but they don't even really correlate with each other. An example of flexibility is like doing the splits, and you can like imagine it's because you're resting. The floor is what's holding your legs there, right? And touching your toes. So you're just letting gravity and you're reaching down towards your toes. So as we dive deeper into mobility, which I love, I honestly didn't know the difference between these for a while in the beginning of my journey. I grew up as a dancer and didn't really know that I was training both of them. But mobility is super duper important. Mobility is the ability to actively move our soft tissue and our joints through the entire range of motion. So again, now the keyword here is actively, whereas with flexibility, it's passive. So strength in flexibility. Now you can imagine, let's say a dancer grabbing their leg and holding it up. That's the flexibility aspect. Now, if they're able to let it go and hold it there, that's insane hip mobility, right? Because it's strong in those flexible positions. Actively, there's usually a motion with mobility as well. So, like, think about okay, like if you grab your arm and you stretch and you have to hold it there, but if you were able to hold it and get this full rotation in like the shoulder joint or in like the hip socket, being able to move through the full range of motion is where mobility really comes into play because you're having, it's not passive, it's active. And then as far as training mobility, you're doing it through a movement, like through reps, just like we do reps with strength training, but you don't necessarily do that when it comes to like training flexibility. When it does come to training mobility and doing reps, which some of you guys have, full blown mobility days in your program, some are, going to get that at some point, some have just little mobility exercises. Um, that's going to be more based around volume, meaning like high reps, uh, rather than intensity. You really don't want to stack on weight, any really heavy weights, like maybe you can use bands and body weight. But approaching mobility exercises have a different approach than how we approach strength training exercises as far as volume and intensity. This is all about the way the joints are actually moving. The best example I can think of is a squat. Um, if you've ever had a personal trainer in person, or if you have somebody like me who requires sending videos, just seeing how somebody squats can tell so much about someone's body, especially if you squat with your arms overhead, because then we can see mobility in the upper body as well. So first of all, make sure you're taking your form videos and sending them to either me or Sheena, because not only is it improving form, but it allows us to see where your strengths and weaknesses are within your mobility. So for example, if you're squatting and your heels are coming up, you're at the bottom of the squat and your heels start to raise and all of your weight is in the balls of your toes, we can pretty much guarantee that you probably have some kind of ankle mobility issue, and we need to really work on that. And maybe that's coming from a flexibility issue in your calves. So then we can foam roll calves or stretch calves, and then you'll be able to get depth in your squat, keeping your weight in your heels, and finally be able to target your glutes. So it really has this kind of like domino effect in to be able to, yes, see like the physical aesthetic achievements that we're looking for, but also just quality of movement and making sure that you're having healthy joints, like joint health, and healthy bones in general, healthy ligaments, making sure that you're preventing injury, because as we get stronger and add weight, we're focusing on like those big muscles, the muscles that we see in the mirror muscles, but there's tiny ligaments and tiny tendons that need to support these movements. So mobility is so freaking important so you don't get injured and then you're up square one and lose all your gains or whatever. And it's just functional movement as a whole. So control through ranges of motion. I think the shoulder is like a really good example, mainly just because of how I'm sitting right now. But the shoulder is a ball and socket, right? You can get a full 360 degrees and the control through that entire range. And maybe you just stand against a wall and you do it to really tell like where is any tightness or where is your elbow starting to bend or things like that. So control through the entire range of motion. And then also just the ability to move your body in different ways. There's obviously a correct way to perform exercises like in the gym when you're targeting certain muscles and to use machines and equipment safely. But at the end of the day, your body is meant to move in different ways. We are not meant to move in a box and stay in perfect alignment all of the time. And that, like I said, that will make you stronger too and prevent injury. So that God forbid you do hold the bar, if you're squatting and the bar is off centered a little bit, we have those strong ligaments and tendons and strong mobility that's not gonna, make us collapse and we can't hold the weight and we injure ourselves. So we should be able to move your body in different weird ways, because I don't know if you believe in that, like we were apes and like came from evolution, but we were probably like swinging from trees and climbing in trees. Like our bodies are not meant to just constantly stay in perfect alignment. So make sure you're training and stretching and doing mobility in ways outside of that kind of perfect box. The most important thing that I would love for everybody to try at some point within the next 24 hours, I was going to have us do it on the call, but I was like, I don't feel like getting up. I got my steps in for the day. I don't need any more movement. I'm not going to make you guys work out right now, but getting up and down from the floor is like it's called like the sit rise test, I'm pretty sure, and it's like the biggest indicator for longevity, for basically how long this person is going to live. Can you sit on the floor and crisscross applesauce and stand up, making as little contact to the ground as possible? So if you're sitting on the ground and in order to get up, you need to put your knees down first, that's like 1 point. Or if you need to put a hand down, that's another point, and you need 2 hands down. So ideally being able to sit in a cross-legged position and fully rise without any additional points of contact. And then same from standing all the way back down to sitting on the ground, fully stable. Highly recommend testing that out every couple of months in your life, especially just as you get older, which we all are. And just making sure that, if you find any sticking points, like, okay, it's really in my ankles or my lower body, or I can get up, but I can't get down, to dive into that and to be curious. Ballerinas and gymnasts are great examples of mobility where, yes, they're flexible, but I think we can all also agree that they're strong. It's not just the passive flexibility. They're able to hold it and utilize full range of motion. So a couple fun ways to assess your own mobility. Definitely the sit to rise test. Like I said, I would highly recommend doing that and kind of testing yourself. And if you're not perfect, if you're making some contact with the ground and whatnot, keep assessing yourself and trying and maybe let me or Sheena know kind of where you're falling short on that and test your progress with that. But I definitely recommend getting familiar with how each joint moves and where the muscles are connected to it. So, for example, like your elbow is really only like a hinge, right? It's just going one way, bending and straightening. But we have circular joints. You can think of like your wrists and your ankles, your hips, your shoulders, as well as like sliding joints, which is, your spine does all of it. Your spine rotates, your spine slides, your spine hinges and everything. So I definitely recommend wrist and ankle circles. I think our hands and our feet definitely do not get the amount of love that they should, especially for how many nerves are in our hands and feet. And especially and nowadays, fun fact, my mom, and if anybody works in the school system, you could probably attest to this, but my mom is a principal of an elementary school. She's been in it for 20 years now. Kids' fine motor skills are literally so different than they were 10, 15 years ago because we are on phones all the time now. They're on tablets. They're growing up with touchscreen. They're not having to hold a pencil. They like literally a whole segment of class now is teaching kids how to hold a pencil because they don't have the fine motor skills. And that's not only fucking up your hands, it's fucking up everything that leads to your hands. It's a whole part of your brain now that's not getting turned on. All of these things. And we've done the same thing to our feet by wearing shoes and always having an inch or two of cushion between our feet and the earth. So our ankles are completely unstable when they're supposed to be fully stable and a lot stronger, which moves up to our knees and our hips and our lower back because it's just fully disconnected. So anyway, I digress. That was a little bit of a tangent, but full wrists and ankle circles, and take your time. Don't move fast with them, like really get familiar. Like if there was a piece of paper here and you had to make the biggest circle, right, with your whole wrist. And same with ankles, like really, really pointing and flexing. And maybe when you notice that you do it with your foot, which I'm doing it now, but no free feet pics. Maybe you notice that like your two toes on the side, like don't move along with the rest of your toes. Or maybe you can like separate your pinky toes, or on one foot, but you can't on the other. We really want to get familiar with your own body and how it moves and get curious and just give those areas attention and then try to kind of piece together where is this coming from, or maybe that little thing is what's causing my lower back pain all the time, or maybe that's something I should focus on stretching out before I get into my heavyweight squats. Arm circles, grabbing hands behind your back, so whether that's like interlacing your fingers behind your back and straightening your elbows, if you can do that, awesome. If not, then let's try to slowly work up to it by holding a towel. As well as kind of exchanging like one hand up behind you and trying to grab your fingers. And again, if that's not perfect right now, you can grab a towel, and you want to be able to work up to that, especially as you're strengthening muscles and contracting through strength training. Neck rolls is a really, really good one, taking your time, making full circles in any area where you feel a twinge or your body is giving you some kind of signal. Hold it, breathe into it. You don't want to ignore these things. Spine articulations, you can think of like cat cows or making like a full-blown wave with your spine from your tailbone up to your neck. I think the best way to do that would be in a tabletop position, like as if you were about to do cat cows, and really get familiar. Where does any part of your spine feel a disconnect? And your pelvis. So they say that your pelvis, your hips are the axis of your whole body. If your hips or your pelvis is off, you can basically guarantee everything else is going to be off. Literally twerking. If you can twerk, that's a huge sign of healthy mobility. So being able to tilt your pelvis forward and backwards and tilt your hips side to side and make squares. Like I grew up as a dancer, and they would have us stand in the mirror and literally push our pelvis forward to the right, to the left, and like make squares and then reverse and then make circles. And as a kid, I was like, what the fuck? But now I'm like so grateful. And sometimes I'll even notice that like I can't do it like I used to. And I'm like, what the fuck? And you want to be able to keep control over your pelvis for a multitude of reasons. Straight leg raise. So think about just like standing in front of the mirror and raising your leg and keeping it straight. And maybe you can only raise it literally 1 or 2 inches off the ground with your knee staying straight. Perfect. Hold that for 30 seconds, breathe into it, and keep working on that over time. And then, like I said, getting up and down off the ground with minimal contact. So yeah, I always feel like a little nerd when I talk about exercise like this. Any questions, comments, concerns, anything that hits different?
I was just thinking about your close friend story with you twerking and how now I want to start twerking.
Oh my God, I posted a video of me twerking on a bar in college. It was actually impressive, honestly, but it was a long time ago. I need to work up to it again.
That was
My
really
favorite thing of
impressive.
all time. So
Katie,
good. I was there in person.
that
I
was
saw that video and I was like, wow. Like
No, right?
I was like, who's Britney Spears? I was really impressed. So that was all.
Stop it. Stop it. Thanks, guys. That's too much. Oh my gosh, Summer, what were you gonna say? Hopefully something more productive.
No, I was gonna say my hip flexors get really tight, and what's a good stretch for that? For that?
Love that. So I definitely would recommend foam rolling. You can foam roll your hip flexors. It might feel kind of weird. You kind of got to like mount the foam roller and maybe like move it off to the side so that you can target one at a time. So I definitely would recommend foam rolling, as well as like
Mhm.
if you have a massage gun, or even just have like Blake like foam roll, or massage
Yeah, yeah.
into your hip flexors. That's one that I really do think like pressure will help. As well as, so imagine getting into a lunge with your back knee on the ground. Okay, I'm gonna do it because there's actually different ways that I want to explain. Here we go. This is gonna feel good. So thank you for asking.
Oh, I got her to get up. I'm just kidding.
Yes. I'm counting all of these steps. Okay, so in a lunge with your back knee on the ground,
Okay.
and you can kind of just like sink deep into it first. I like to do that to warm up. But then ideally you kind of want to come to a full standing, or not standing, but kind of an upright position where you're not leaning into it, but you're kind of stacked. And
Mhm.
then tuck your pelvis forward, like as if you're literally thrusting and curling your tailbone under. You will definitely feel it. For even more of a stretch, you can lift the arm that's opposite from the leg that's in front up and kind of lean over. You'll really feel how your hip flexors connect into your core here. But yeah, this is like the best hip flexor stretch that I can think of. It's definitely the tucking. But even if you could lean forward, if you can grab this, it's getting a little bit more into quads.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good one. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I'm gonna try that later.
Yeah, you should. Definitely. All right. Anybody else? Okay. That's fine. Well, love you guys. Glad everybody got to come and show up. And yeah, have a lovely rest of your Wednesday. Talk to you soon. Bye.